Usually, good afternoon to all of you. Usually, post-lunch sessions are quite difficult because people are totally in the process of digesting something, and they are not always tuned to listen to what will eventually happen, and that's a very interesting panel. So we have decided this time not to offer lunch so that you can really focus on the coming session. Let me also, by way of introduction as to the subject, I was sitting next to a very good colleague of mine in Brussels during the last EU seminar on proliferation, and told him about our upcoming idea to hold a conference on the NPT. So my friend, well versed into the arms control, looked at me and said, "Aha, Israel and NPT, what a surprise." Well, I think that it shouldn't come as a surprise. If you take a look at the title, and has already been mentioned, the nuclear non-proliferation regime at the crossroads. I took a look at it today because I thought that at the end you could either have, Emily, a question mark or an exclamation mark. But you have neither nor, which is also quite interesting. I, however, will have no doubt that the NPT treaty, or broadly speaking, the NPT regime, has since the beginning of the century or the 90s, has been at a crossroad. And when you find yourself at a crossroad, you have few options. You can decide to park at the crossroad for a while because you don't know which road to take, or to put it in Camille Grand's words, kind of muddling through. Or you can take the road that you chose, or you can take the wrong road, either mistakenly or because of a wrong decision. So what way will the NPT take is still a question mark. My feeling, however, is that the NPT has been consciously or subconsciously going in the wrong direction. Can you change course? You can, theoretically. And practically, it takes a lot, but I'm afraid that that is not likely to happen for a variety of reasons that I, as somebody who am supposed to introduce and not to have a speech, cannot go into it. I, however, hope that in the course of the conference we will be able not only to analyze the situation, but to make also recommendations as to how to rectify the situation. But before doing that, it will be useful to set the stage for our conference by providing an historical background that has led to the recognition that there is a need for such a treaty as a means to achieve the goals set at the time by the international community. And without going into details, something I believe our panelists will do, there is no doubt that the Cold War could be described as the golden period or era of the treaty. After all, the NPT treaty has facilitated the emergence of a powerful international norms against nuclear non-proliferation. The regime was successful in significantly reducing the number of states that strove to acquire nuclear weapons. We all cite President Kennedy, who in 1962 predicted that by the end of the 20th century, between 15 and 20 countries will possess nuclear weapons. That hasn't happened. The reason for the success of the NPT to stem the process of proliferations has first and foremost to do with the fact that it suited the interest of the two superpowers that had vital interest in preserving the world order, i.e. avoiding a confrontation. I'm sure that the panelists will also expand on it. The situation has, as I has radically changed following the end of the Cold War with the changing interest of the US and Russia and other nuclear weapon states. That doesn't mean that the nuclear states have lost their interest to maintain their superiority, but new interests became more dominant, with the outcome that the gap between the declaratory statement calling for stemming proliferation and combating it has widened. In order to describe the post-Cold War situation, let me end my brief introduction by quoting from the preface of Ephraim Askrai's memorandum, Rethinking the NPT Regime, where he is quoting from a statement made in a conference following the NPT PrepCom in 2002. I'm quoting, "Multilateral instruments such as disarmament, IAE safeguards, security guarantees, and nuclear transfer restrictions and export control might not be sufficient as a whole to deal with the forms of nuclear threats and changes. Symptomatic for problematic difficulties in these areas are unresolved compliance concern in NPT states parties, notably Iraq and North Korea, and one can of course add Iran, Syria, and Libya, as well as a sense of helplessness and cluelessness with respect to the nuclear weapon capabilities of non-state parties." End of quotation. With those observations in mind, let me then introduce our three panelists in a row so that they could then, in that order, make their statements. First, to my right is Camille Grant, has been director of the Fondation pour la Recherche Stratégique, the leading French think tank on defense and security since 2008. Camille had served in French governments, holding senior positions in the ministries of defense and foreign affairs, and has worked with a series of French and European think tanks. He has published extensively on European security, non-proliferation, and nuclear policy. In 2009-10, he served as a civilian advisor to the group of experts on new strategic concepts for NATO, led by Madeleine Albright, and since 2010 he has served as the chairman of the EU Non-Proliferation Consortium. Next speaker will be Ambassador Israel Michaeli, who was our ambassador to the IAEA and the CTBTO between 2004 and 2009. Israel Michaeli began his career at the Israeli Atom Energy Agency in 1970, and as a member of Israel negotiation team and later chief negotiator in the CTBT between 1994 and 1996. Israel has also served on Israel's National Security Council as Deputy National Security Advisor and Acting National Security Advisor. Last but not least, on the far end is Yair Evron. On the far left,
no,
next to me, sorry, next to me. I somehow mistaken me. Yair taught
I belong to the extreme left.
I know. You see, that's it. Yair Evron taught international relations in the Department of Political Science at Tel Aviv University and was its chairman between 1987 and 90. Professor Evron established the graduate program in security studies at Tel Aviv University and was its head from 1994 to 1998. He taught also at Sussex University, and the Hebrew University, and was a visiting professor to a number of distinguished universities like Harvard, UCLA, Cornell, Georgetown. Yair was co-director of the project on security and arms control in the Middle East at the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and has published extensively on international politics, strategic affairs, the Arab-Israeli conflict, nuclear proliferation, arms control. He is the author of Israel's Nuclear Dilemma, published at Cornell University Press in 1994. Camille, please.